Chapter 1. We used to be solid. I used to believe that if you worked hard enough, stayed loyal enough, and showed up every day, things would hold together. Not perfectly, but solid. That was the word I always came back to when I thought about us. Solid. No drama. No games. Just two people pulling in the same direction. My morning started before the sun. Coffee brewed on autopilot, tie knotted by muscle memory. The quiet hum of responsibility settling into my shoulders before the day even began. I didn't complain. I wore the long hours like armor. Providing wasn't a burden to me. It was pride. It was proof that I was doing my part. She used to see that. Back then, she'd sit at the edge of the bed and ask, half asleep, "You coming home early tonight?" Knowing full well I probably wouldn't. Sometimes she waited up anyway. I'd find her curled on the couch, TV still on, blanket pulled up to her chin. I'd kiss her forehead, and she'd murmur something sarcastic about me working too much, but her hand would always find mine. That was us. Simple. Real. Sunday mornings were our thing. No alarms. Coffee in mismatched mugs. Me pretending not to care about burnt toast while she laughed and called herself a domestic failure. Inside jokes no one else would ever get. A rhythm that didn't need words. That's why the silence at the dinner table felt so loud. "Dinner's getting cold," I said, more gently than necessary. She looked up from her phone like she'd been pulled out of a different world. "Oh yeah, sorry." Her phone buzzed again before she even set it down. She didn't look at it this time, but her fingers tightened around it, knuckles whitening just a bit. A small thing, barely noticeable. I noticed anyway. "So," I said, cutting into my chicken. "How was work?" "Busy." One word. Flat. Her eyes dropped back to the screen, thumb hovering, waiting. "Busy how?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Curious, not accusing. She sighed like I'd asked something exhausting. "Just meetings. Deadlines." You know, I didn't know, or at least I thought I did. But she used to tell me stories. About coworkers she couldn't stand. About projects that stressed her out. Now I was just busy. Always busy. Her phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up immediately. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Just work stuff." She smiled then, but it didn't reach her eyes. That smile felt practiced, like something she put on instead of something that happened naturally. I watched her without meaning to. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, a new habit. The way she sat a little straighter than usual, shoulders back, like she was aware of being seen, even though it was just me. The blouse she wore was new. I didn't remember seeing it before. It fit differently than her old work clothes. Sharper. More intentional. "You get a haircut?" I asked. She touched her hair instinctively. "Oh, yeah. Last week. I like it," I said. "Thanks," she replied, already glancing back at her phone. There was a time when she would have smiled at that. Teased me for noticing late. Leaned across the table and said something smart. Now, the compliment landed like a drop of water on concrete. We ate in pieces of conversation. Half answers. Distracted nods. At one point, her phone buzzed again, and she didn't even pretend not to look. She angled the screen away from me as she typed, shoulders subtly turning like she was shielding something important. "Long night?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Probably. Every night's been long lately." That finally got her attention. She raised an eyebrow, defensive before I'd even finished the thought. "It's just how things are right now." "I'm not complaining," I said. And I meant it. Just noticing. "Well, don't," she snapped, then immediately softened her voice. "I mean, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I nodded and went back to my food, even though my appetite was gone. The room felt different. Not tense exactly, just off. Like a familiar song played at the wrong speed. After dinner, she stood and carried her plate to the sink. Her phone came with her. Always with her now. She leaned against the counter, scrolling while the water ran, barely paying attention to what she was doing. I remembered when she used to leave her phone everywhere. On the couch. In the bathroom. Face down on the table without a second thought. Now it might as well have been surgically attached to her palm. "You heading out again tonight?" I asked. She didn't turn around. "Yeah, I told you. I've got stuff to finish." "What time?" "Late." That was the whole answer. I watched her get ready afterward. Not obviously, just enough to notice. She changed outfits twice. adjusted her makeup in the mirror longer than usual. When she caught me looking, she gave me a look that felt almost challenging. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "You look nice." She smiled, sharp and quick. "It's just work." "Of course," I replied. She grabbed her keys, phone already in hand. At the door, she paused. For a split second, I thought she might come back. Kiss me goodbye like she used to. Say something warm. Instead, she said, "Don't wait up," and was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house felt bigger than it should have. I sat there longer than I meant to, staring at nothing, letting memories fill in the quiet. The way she used to text me during the day, just to say she missed me. The way she used to complain when I worked too much, not because she was angry, but because she wanted me around. People change, I told myself. Careers get demanding. Life gets complicated. Loyal men don't jump to conclusions. They look inward first. They ask what they can do better, what they missed. I stood, rinsed my plate, and turned off the lights. As I headed to bed alone, I pushed the unease down where I always push things that didn't have clear answers. She's just tired, he thinks. We both are. Chapter 2. Late nights and new excuses. It didn't happen all at once. That's the part people never understand. Betrayal doesn't kick the door in. It slips through the cracks you convince yourself are harmless. The late nights started quietly. One here, two there. A text sent while I was still at work. Running late. Don't wait up. At first, I didn't even look up from my laptop when the messages came in. Deadlines were deadlines. I knew how projects piled up. I'd built my career on staying late when other people went home. Sacrifice wasn't suspicious. It was familiar. But routines have weight, and repetition turns excuses into patterns. By the third week, I could predict it. Dinner alone. The TV murmuring to an empty couch. Her side of the bed cold when I finally turned in. She always came home after midnight now, heels in hand, keys jingling softly like she was sneaking in instead of returning to her own house. The first night, I stayed awake waiting. I heard the door before I heard her voice. She moved differently. Lighter. Not drunk, energized. She smelled different too. Not perfume. Something sharper. Cleaner. Like air-conditioned confidence in expensive offices. "You're still up?" she asked, surprised, like I'd broken an unspoken rule. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Long day." "Same," she replied, already walking past me toward the bedroom. "I'm exhausted." She wasn't. I watched her in the mirror as she wiped her makeup off. She hummed under her breath. A song I didn't recognize. When she caught my reflection watching her, she smiled, but it was quick, guarded. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just missed you." That earned me a strange look. Not warmth. Not guilt. Something closer to irritation. "Well, this is how it's going to be for a while," she said. "The project's behind. My boss needs me." She said my boss the way some people say a name. The words became her shield. Any question bounced off them. Why so late? The project's behind. Why no calls? My boss needs me. Why every night? It's temporary. Except temporary started to look permanent. She stopped asking about my day altogether. I'd sit across from her at breakfast, suit jacket over my arm, tie half done, and she'd already be scrolling, already elsewhere. "Big meeting today," I'd say, offering her an opening. She'd respond without looking up. But if I stayed quiet long enough, she'd fill the space with him. "Mark thinks we might need another week," she said one morning, stirring her coffee. "He's such a perfectionist." Mark, the boss. His name slipped into our kitchen like it belonged there. "Oh yeah," I said. "Sounds intense." She smiled at her mug. "He just pushes people to be better." That night, she didn't come home until almost 2. I was sitting on the edge of the bed when she walked in, loosening her hair, cheeks flushed. She didn't jump when she saw me this time. She expected it. "You're making this a thing," she said before I'd even spoken. "I haven't said anything," I replied. "You don't have to," she snapped. "I can feel it." I stood up slowly. "I just asked when you'd be home." "And I told you," she said, tossing her bag onto the chair. "I'm busy." "Why is that so hard for you to understand?" "I understand busy," I said. "I don't understand disappearing." That did it. She laughed, not amused, not kind. Sharp. "God, you sound paranoid." "I sound like your husband," I said quietly. She froze for a second. Then her face hardened. Don't do that, she said. Don't make this about us just because you're uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. That was the word she chose. The days blurred together after that. Her wardrobe changed. Clothes that hugged instead of hid. Shoes she never wore before. She checked herself in mirrors she used to ignore. She guarded her phone like it carried classified information, angling the screen away from me, silencing notifications the second they appeared. Once, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The name at the top of the screen was enough. Mark. When she came out, towel wrapped around her, she saw me looking at the phone and scooped it up instantly. You don't trust me now? She asked, eyes narrowing. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. That was the thing. Everything became an accusation before it became a conversation. The next Friday, she came home earlier than usual, just after 10. She dropped her keys louder than necessary, energy buzzing off her like static. Good night, I asked. She smiled to herself. Productive? Just you and your boss again? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She tilted her head, studying me. Why? No reason, I said. Just noticing. There you go again, she said, kicking off her shoes. Always noticing. Always counting. Counting what? My hours. My time. My effort, she said. You're acting like I owe you explanations. I folded my arms. You do. We're married. She scoffed. That doesn't mean I stopped growing. I never said that. But you're thinking it. We stood there, facing each other, the space between us filled with things neither of us wanted to say out loud. I searched her face for something familiar. For the woman who used to wait up for me. For the partner who cared if I felt shut out. Instead, I saw impatience. Confidence sharpened into something cocky. So, this is just how it's going to be? I asked. She crossed her arms, mirroring me. A challenge. This is what success looks like, she said. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for you. I stared at her, really stared this time. Every night, though. Her, smirking. That's what ambition looks like. Sorry if that scares you. Chapter 3. If you don't trust me. The argument didn't start with shouting. It started with tone. That calm, clipped edge she'd developed lately. The one that said she was already 10 steps ahead of me and tired of waiting for me to catch up. We were in the kitchen again, the same room where we used to argue about paint colors and grocery lists. Now it felt like neutral ground in a war neither of us had officially declared. She came in late. Again, just after 11. I was at the table with paperwork spread out in front of me, not really working, just pretending to be busy so I wouldn't look like I was waiting. You're up, she said, setting her bag down. So are you, I replied. She rolled her eyes and reached for a glass. Can we not do this tonight? I'm not doing anything, I said. I just asked what time it was. She filled the glass, took a long drink, then leaned back against the counter. Her posture was relaxed, almost smug, like she already knew how this conversation would go. You've been weird lately, she said. I looked up at that. Weird how? Quiet. Watching me. Acting like I'm doing something wrong. I am watching, I said evenly. Because you're not here. Her jaw tightened. I told you why. You told me the same sentence, I replied. Over and over. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Unbelievable. What is? That you're making this a problem, she said. I thought you of all people would understand ambition. There was again. That word. Ambition. The shield she hid behind whenever I got too close to the truth. I understand ambition, I said. I don't understand why it suddenly requires shutting me out. She straightened up, defensive now. No one is shutting you out. You don't talk to me anymore, I said. You come home late, you guard your phone, you snap at me for asking basic questions. Because you're interrogating me, she shot back. Every night feels like a cross-examination. That's not fair, I said. I'm trying to stay connected. She scoffed. No, you're trying to control things. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. That's not who I am. It's who you're being, she said. You're acting insecure. The word hit harder than it should have. Insecure, I repeated. Yes, she said, crossing her arms. Jealous. Suspicious. It's not attractive. I stared at her, searching for something familiar in her face. Some sign that she cared how that landed. I didn't find it. I've never given you a reason not to trust me, she continued. her voice smooth, practiced. But you're treating me like I've done something wrong. I'm reacting to what I see, I said. To what's changed. People change, she snapped. Careers change. Just because you're comfortable staying in your lane doesn't mean I have to stay in mine. That stung. Not because it was true, but because it was meant to. I've supported you, I said. Every step. You say that, she replied. But the second my job actually demands something, you start getting weird. I get concerned, I corrected. There's a difference. She shook her head and laughed again, sharper this time. You know what this really is? I waited. You're intimidated, she said, by the fact that I'm doing something important, by the people I'm around. That's ridiculous, I said. Is it? She challenged. My boss is successful, confident. He respects what I bring to the table. Maybe that makes you uncomfortable. There it was. The comparison. Subtle, but deliberate. I've never once competed with anyone for you, I said quietly. Well, maybe you should, she replied without thinking. The silence that followed was heavy. She realized what she'd said a second too late, but she didn't take it back. Just lifted her chin like she'd stand by it if she had to. I took a breath. I'm not your enemy. She exhaled sharply. Then stop acting like one. I just want honesty, I said. I want to feel like we're on the same team. She stepped closer now, eyes hard. What you want is reassurance every 5 minutes. That's not true. Yes, it is, she said. You want me to slow down, to check in, to make myself smaller, so you don't feel threatened. I shook my head. I've never asked you to be smaller. But that's how it feels, she shot back. And I'm done apologizing for wanting more. For wanting more than what? I asked. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Then her voice firmed up. More than this constant suspicion, she said. More than being questioned every time I work late. I studied her face. The confidence, the deflection, the complete lack of reassurance. So help me understand, I said. Why does it feel like you're pushing me away? Her lips pressed together. When she spoke again, her tone was calm, controlled, dangerous. Because you're pushing first, she said, with your doubts, your looks, your little comments. I laughed once, humorless. You're rewriting history. No, she said. I'm setting boundaries. For marriage? For myself, she corrected. We stood there, two people who knew each other's habits, weaknesses, tells, now using them like weapons. She watched me closely, waiting, expecting me to back down, to say sorry, to make it easier. Instead, I stayed quiet. She mistook the silence for surrender and pressed on. I'm working late, she said firmly. With my boss. That's not changing. If you can't handle that, that's on you. I looked at her, really looked at her. Not the woman I married, but the one standing in front of me now. Then she said it, casually, like it was reasonable, like it was already decided. Her, if you don't trust me working late with my boss every night, maybe we shouldn't be together. She waited, watched my face, expected the usual response, defensiveness, apologies, fear of losing her. Instead, there's silence. Inside his head, something clicks. Not rage, clarity. She didn't reassure me. She challenged me. Chapter 4. You're absolutely right. The silence stretched longer than she expected. She stood there in the kitchen, arms folded, chin lifted, eyes sharp with the confidence of someone who had just delivered an ultimatum and was waiting for it to land. I could tell she was bracing for the usual, my explanation, my defense, my apology. The familiar rhythm where I tried to smooth things over, to prove I was reasonable, to show I wasn't the insecure man she just painted me as. I didn't give her that. I looked at her for a long moment instead. Really looked. The posture, the distance in her eyes, the way her body angled slightly away from mine, like she was already halfway out the door. Something in me finally slowed down. The noise in my head, the questions, the doubts, the instinct to fix went quiet. You're absolutely right, I said. The words landed softly, but they hit her like a slap. She blinked. What? You're right. I repeated calm, even, if that's how you feel. Her brows drew together. She laughed once, uncertain. Wait, what do you mean? I shrugged, a small movement that felt heavier than any argument we'd had in weeks. I mean, you made your point. That's it? She asked. You're not going to argue? What would be the point? I replied. She stared at me like she was waiting for the rest of the sentence, for the condition, for the plea. When none came, irritation crept into her voice. So you just okay with this? I nodded. I said you were right. That was when the ground shifted beneath her. I saw it in her face, the flicker of confusion, the quick recalculation. This wasn't how this conversation was supposed to go. She'd drawn a line expecting me to rush to her side of it. Instead, I'd step back. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. I meant, if you're going to keep acting like this. Like what? I asked. Suspicious. Cold, she said. If you're going to keep making my job a problem. I held her gaze. I'm not making anything a problem. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in a long while, she didn't seem to know what to say next. I picked up my jacket from the chair. I'm going to take a walk. At this hour? She asked. Yeah. She scoffed, trying to regain control. So now you're the one storming off? I paused at the doorway and looked back at her. No, I said. I'm just giving you space. That annoyed her more than anger would have. She hated space. She hated not knowing where she stood. Don't be dramatic, she said. I didn't respond. I stepped outside and let the door close behind me. The night air felt different. Cooler. Clearer. I walked without direction at first, hands in my pockets, thoughts steady instead of spiraling. I replayed the conversation, not with regret, but with detachment. The way she hadn't reassured me. The way she challenged me instead. The confidence with which she'd implied I was replaceable. By the time I came back, the house was dark. Her car was still in the driveway, but she'd gone to bed without another word. That would have bothered me once. Tonight it didn't. I sat at my desk instead of joining her. Turned on a lamp. Opened my laptop. There it was. The email I'd been pretending didn't exist. Subject: relocation opportunity. New York office. I stared at it longer than necessary. I remembered the day it arrived. How I'd read it twice, felt the rush of validation, then closed it without replying. New York meant longer hours, more responsibility, real influence. It also meant distance. A different life. I'd told myself it wasn't the right time. She'd been sitting on the couch that night, legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. They want me in New York, I'd said back then, trying to sound casual. She hadn't even looked up. That's far. Yeah, I said. It's a big move. Well, she replied, distracted. We have our life here. So I declined. Not because I didn't want it, but because I wanted us more. Because I believed sacrifice was what loyalty looked like. I opened the email now. The words felt different this time. Less like temptation, more like alignment. Higher pay, leadership role, clear trajectory, a chance to build something that was mine. I thought about the way she'd looked at me tonight when I didn't chase her ultimatum. The way confidence had drained from her face the moment I stopped negotiating my worth. I clicked reply. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Not from fear, from finality. I typed 2 sentences. Clear, professional, decisive. Then I leaned back in the chair and exhaled. For months, I'd been bending myself into a shape that fit her comfort. Shrinking questions, swallowing instincts, convincing myself that loyalty meant endurance. The cursor blinked patiently, waiting. I didn't hesitate. This time, he clicks accept. Chapter 5. The distance grows faster than expected. The first box sat in the middle of the living room like an accusation. I hadn't announced anything yet. Not officially. I told myself I was just getting organized, just sorting through things I didn't need anymore. Old files. Books I'd already read. Suits that didn't fit the man I was becoming. Still, the box stayed there, half-filled, impossible to ignore. She noticed it the moment she walked in. What's that? She asked, dropping her keys on the counter. Stuff, I said. Work things. Oh, she replied. That was it. No follow-up. No curiosity. She kicked off her heels and walked past it like it was furniture we'd always had. That should have hurt. A month ago, it would have. Instead, it just confirmed what I already knew. The emotional distance had been there for a while. Now, it was taking up space. Cardboard and packing tape. Open drawers. Empty shelves. Silence where conversations used to live. She didn't fight it. That surprised me more than anything. If anything, she seemed lighter. She came home later than usual now, not even pretending to check in. Sometimes she didn't text at all. I'd hear the door well after midnight, feel the mattress dip for a moment, then nothing. No goodnight, no warmth, just coexistence. At breakfast, we sat across from each other like co-workers sharing a table. She scrolled. I drank my coffee. The clink of the mug against the counter sounded louder than it should have. "So," she said one morning, eyes still on her phone, "when are you leaving?" The question was casual. Too casual. "Soon," I replied. "Okay," she said. No emotion. No resistance. "Just let me know." That was when I realized something else had changed. She wasn't indifferent because she didn't care. She was indifferent because she felt ahead of it, like she'd already emotionally packed her own boxes. Her style shifted again. Dresses she never wore around me. Heels on weeknights. Lipstick just a shade bolder than before. She spent longer in front of the mirror now, angling her face, adjusting her hair, checking herself from the side. I'd stand in the doorway sometimes, unnoticed, watching her admire her reflection. "New look?" I asked once. She smiled at herself. "Just feeling good." "Looks good," I said. She nodded, still looking at the mirror. I know. That edge had crept into her confidence now. Not playful, not inviting, arrogant in a quiet way, like she didn't need validation anymore, but enjoyed knowing it was there. She started staying out even later. When she did come home early enough for dinner, she picked at her food, already mentally elsewhere. "Long night again?" I asked one evening. "Probably gonna be the norm," she said. "You should get used to it." "I am," I replied. She glanced at me then, suspicious. "You're being weirdly calm about all this." I shrugged. No point stressing about what I can't control. That unsettled her. I could tell. She preferred me worried. Questions had been my role. Concern had been my currency. Without it, she didn't quite know where she stood. Boxes multiplied. Closet half empty. Drawers that once held my things now echoed when opened. I packed methodically. No anger. No drama. Just decisions. One night, she leaned against the doorframe watching me fold shirts. "You're really doing this," she said. "Yes." She tilted her head. "You always hated change." "I hated unnecessary change." I corrected. She smirked. "And this is necessary." "For me," I said. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're being dramatic." I didn't respond. I taped the box shut instead. She went out that night, wearing something new, something sharp. She didn't ask what I thought. She didn't say goodbye. I noticed how she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror before leaving, smoothing her dress, lifting her chin. She didn't look back at me once. At work, my days stretched longer. Calls with New York, planning meetings, new responsibilities already creeping in. It felt strange, exciting, even to have something pulling me forward instead of holding me in place. When I came home late one night, she was already gone. A note sat on the counter. "Out. Don't wait up." I didn't. I sat on the couch, the half-packed house around me, and felt an unexpected calm settle in. The anxiety that had lived in my chest for weeks was gone. In its place was something steadier. Acceptance, maybe, or clarity. She came home close to 2, heels in hand, humming softly. She froze when she saw me awake. "You're still up?" "Yeah," I said. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, walked past me. "I'm exhausted." I watched her disappear into the bedroom. A minute later, I heard the bathroom light click on. I followed quietly, stopping just short of the doorway. She stood in front of the mirror again, studying herself, smiling, adjusting her hair. She didn't look tired at all. She caught my reflection this time. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just noticed." She turned back to the mirror, dismissing me without words. I went back to the living room and sat among the boxes, the space between us now measurable in feet instead of feelings. Funny how quickly it happened once I stopped chasing answers. Funny thing about detachment, he thinks, once you stop caring, you start seeing everything clearly. He notices how she watches herself in a mirror more than she watches him leave. Chapter 6, Red Flags Don't Wave, They Whisper. It wasn't a single moment that convinced me something was wrong. It was the accumulation of small, quiet things, the kind you only notice once you stop trying to explain them away. I stopped asking questions. That was the change. Not because I didn't care, but because I wanted to see what happened when I didn't prompt her, when I didn't fill the silence. When I didn't offer her the easy version of myself that smoothed over discomfort, patterns don't announce themselves. They repeat. Her phone was the first thing I noticed. Not that she used it more, she always had, but the way she used it. Messages would come in, and she'd read them instantly, then swipe again. Longer than a normal read. Shorter than a reply. When I walked into the room, the screen went dark. Who was that? I asked once casually. No one, she said too quickly. Work. I nodded. Late for work. She didn't like that. Why are you timing my messages now? I'm not, I said. And I wasn't. I was just listening. The deleted messages were accidental discoveries. She'd hand me her phone to look something up, directions, a restaurant, a calendar invite, and I'd notice gaps in threads. Conversations that jumped from hello to nothing. Days missing like they'd been erased with intent. You delete your messages now? I asked one afternoon, scrolling. She snatched the phone back, irritation flashing across her face. I clean it out. My phone gets cluttered. Since when? Since always, she snapped. Why does everything feel like an interrogation with you? I raised my hand slightly. Just asking. Well, stop, she said. It's exhausting. So I did. The calls were harder to miss. She'd get in the car to grab something, then sit there for 10 minutes with the engine off, voice low, posture tense. Or she'd step outside, jacket already on, phone pressed tight to her ear. Once, I opened the door mid-call without thinking. She jumped. I'll call you back, she said into the phone, then ended it before I could hear the response. Everything okay? I asked. She forced a smile. Yeah, just work. In the driveway, she exhaled sharply. Do you want me to lose my job or something? That was her move now. Turn curiosity into accusation. Concern into control. The name started appearing more often after that. Mark, not always in full view. Sometimes just the first letter lighting up the screen before it disappeared. Sometimes the contact name replaced by silence when she flipped the phone face down. One night, close to midnight, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't asleep yet. Neither was she. She glanced at it, then turned away from me, shoulders tensing. You're not going to answer? I asked. Not now, she said. The phone buzzed again. She sighed and picked it up. I need to take this. Now, I asked. It's almost 12. She looked at me like I was inconveniencing her. It's important. She stepped into the bathroom and closed the door. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled cadence of her voice through the wall. Not the words, just the tone. Soft, engaged, a tone she hadn't used with me in weeks. When she came back, she avoided my eyes. Everything okay? I asked again. She nodded. Just work stuff. Go to sleep. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she was already dressed when I woke up. Makeup done. Hair perfect. She moved around the bedroom with purpose, like she had somewhere she needed to be emotionally, not just physically. You're up early, I said. Big day, she replied, checking her phone. Mark wants to go over a few things. There was again. Casual. Normalized. Together? I asked. She shot me a look. Don't start. I didn't. I watched instead. Watched how she smiled at her screen before catching herself. Watched how she angled the phone away from me at breakfast. Watched how she no longer kissed me goodbye, just a distracted pat on the arm, like muscle memory performing without intention. I started keeping mental notes. Not evidence. Not screenshots or timelines. Just moments. Feelings. Shifts. The way she laughed at something on her phone and didn't share the joke. The way she got defensive when I was calm. The way she spoke about her boss with admiration she never used for me anymore. He really gets it, she said once, talking more to herself than to me. He understands how much pressure this is. I almost laughed. I'd been carrying pressure for years. Quietly, without applause. One evening, she came home later than usual. She smelled like city air and adrenaline. She dropped her bag and leaned against the counter, scrolling. How was your night? I asked. Good, she said. Long, just work. She looked up, annoyed. Always work. Why is that so hard for you to accept? It's not, I said. I accept it. She narrowed her eyes. You don't sound like it. That's because I stopped arguing with it, I replied. That confused her. She preferred resistance. It made her feel justified. Later, while she showered, her phone buzzed again. Midnight. The screen lit up just enough for me to see the name. Mark. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I sat there, listening to the water run, thinking about how strange it was that the loudest warnings were always the quietest ones. No shouting, no proof, just a growing sense that I was being edged out of my own life. When she came out, towel wrapped around her, she saw my expression and stiffened. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. Just tired. She studied me for a second, then nodded and went back to scrolling, already gone again. I turned off the light and lay there in the dark, not angry, not devastated, just awake. Aware. Red flags don't wave. They whisper. And once you hear them, you can't unhear the message they're carrying. The betrayal isn't physical yet, or maybe it already is, but the disrespect is undeniable. Chapter 7. What are you doing this weekend? The airport had a way of making everything feel temporary. People moved with purpose, but no attachment. Rolling suitcases, murmured goodbyes, quick glances at departure boards that decided their next few hours. I like that. No history, no expectations, just motion. I sat near the window with a black coffee cooling in my hand, jacket folded neatly over my carry-on. Outside, planes taxied slowly across the tarmac, engines humming like restrained power. I checked my watch. Early. Exactly how I liked it. My phone buzzed. I didn't rush to look at it. That instinct had faded somewhere between the packed boxes and the quiet nights. When I finally picked it up, her name sat at the top of the screen like it always had, familiar, almost ironic now. Her. What are you doing this weekend? I stared at the message longer than necessary. The question was casual, almost careless. The kind of question you ask when you assume access. When you believe the other person is still orbiting your schedule, still available for last-minute plans or sudden curiosity. A week ago, I might have answered differently. Working. Nothing. Why? I pictured how the conversation would have gone. Her vague explanation. A sudden change of plans. The possibility that she needed me conveniently free. Not this time. I locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket, watching a family walk past, parents half arguing, kids bouncing with impatience. Real life, moving forward without pausing to ask permission. My mind drifted back to the morning I'd left. She hadn't woken up. I moved quietly through the house, the last box already by the door. The place felt hollow without being sad, like a hotel after checkout. I'd stood for a moment in the living room, looking at the bare wall where our photos used to hang. Not angry, not nostalgic, just aware that the chapter had already ended before either of us said so out loud. At the door, I hesitated, not because I wanted to stay, but because habit is stubborn. I glanced back toward the bedroom. She slept facing away from the door, phone charging on the nightstand, screen lighting up once while I stood there. I left without waking her. At the airport now, my phone buzzed again. Same message preview. Same assumption. I pulled it out this time and opened the camera instead. The lighting was good, natural clean. I angled the phone just enough to catch the terminal behind me. High ceilings, glass walls, the unmistakable signage in bold letters. John F. Kennedy International Airport. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I looked calm, grounded, like a man exactly where he was supposed to be. Click. The image felt honest. No performance. No explanation required. I tapped her message, attached the photo, and hit send. He sent a selfie instead. Cool, composed, John F. Kennedy International Airport glowing behind him. No caption, no explanation, just truth. Chapter 8. Now she panics. The response was immediate. My phone vibrated once. Then again. It didn't stop. I watched it light up on the small table beside me as I stood near the boarding gate, listening to the low murmur of announcements echo through the terminal. A woman nearby argued quietly with an airline agent. Somewhere behind me, a child laughed. Life moved on at its usual pace while my phone buzzed like it had something urgent to prove. I didn't pick it up. A minute passed, then another. The vibration changed rhythm, calls now, not texts. I glanced down, saw her name flashing insistently, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not guilt, not anxiety, control. I sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and let it ring out. When I finally checked the messages, They stacked on top of each other, tone shifting with each new line. What? Where are you? Is that now? Then the call came again. I declined it this time. Another text appeared almost instantly. Her. Wait, what? You didn't tell me. I exhaled slowly through my nose, eyes drifting back to the window where a plane eased away from a gate, unbothered by anything except its own schedule. You never asked. The thought didn't come with bitterness. It came with clarity, like stating a fact you'd finally stopped arguing with. I imagine her on the other end, phone in hand, posture stiff, confidence cracking as she replayed the last few weeks in her head. All the nights she'd brush past me. All the conversations she'd shut down. All the time she'd assumed I'd still be there, still waiting, still orbiting her convenience. The idea that I could leave without permission hadn't occurred to her. My phone rang again. Voicemail this time. I let it go. I walked toward the coffee stand, ordered another cup I didn't really need, and took my time waiting for it. When I checked my phone again, the messages had changed tone completely. Why didn't you say anything? Are you mad at me? Call me. Please. Please. That word hadn't shown up in our conversations for a long time. I sat back down and finally opened her voicemail, not to listen, just to see the transcription. Her words came through broken and rushed. Hey, just call me, okay? I don't like surprises like this. We should talk before you do something drastic. Drastic? I almost smiled. Nothing about this felt drastic. It felt measured, deliberate, long overdue. Another call came in. I silenced it again and slipped the phone into my jacket pocket. I wasn't angry enough to engage. I wasn't hurt enough to explain. Silence, I'd learned, had a weight words couldn't match. Boarding was announced for an earlier group. People stood, gathering their things. I remained seated, unhurried. For once, there was nowhere I needed to rush to for someone else. My phone buzzed again. A text this time, shorter, sharper. So you're just not going to tell me what's going on? I pictured her pacing now, checking the time, rereading the photo, zooming in on the background like it might give her answers she'd ignored when they were spoken plainly. I typed a reply, then deleted it. I didn't know her reassurance anymore. That privilege had been spent. Instead, I stared at the departure board. My flight number blinked steadily beside the word on time. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. When I finally did check my phone again, the concern had curdled into frustration. This is really unfair. We should have talked about this. I can't believe you do this without saying anything. I shook my head slightly. We had talked. Many times. I'd asked questions. She'd answered with deflection. She'd drawn lines and dared me to cross them. She'd assumed I would flinch. This was simply me taking her seriously. I stood and joined the boarding line when my group was called. As I moved forward, my phone buzzed one last time. Her. Can you at least tell me when you're coming back? I read it once. Then again. Coming back. The phrase felt outdated, like a return address to a place that no longer existed. I didn't respond. I scanned my boarding pass, walked down the jet bridge, and found my seat. Window. Always window. As I settled in, I turned my phone off completely, not out of spite, but out of intention. When the plane began to taxi, I watched the terminal slide past, glass and steel shrinking into the background. Somewhere inside it, she was probably still staring at her screen, waiting for an explanation that wasn't coming. For the first time, she's off balance. The power dynamic flips. He doesn't rush home, doesn't explain. He lets silence do the damage. Chapter 9, the truth comes out. The truth didn't explode. It slipped out quietly, like it had been waiting for permission. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same one where we used to plan vacations and argue about groceries. Now it was bare. No placemats. No warmth. Just 2 mugs of untouched coffee and a silence that felt intentional. She was the one who asked to talk. Can we just clear the air? She said, arms folded tight across her chest. Not defensive. Contained. Like she already knew where this was going and wanted to control the landing. I nodded once. Go ahead. She hesitated, eyes darting toward the window, then back to me. I noticed how carefully she avoided my gaze, how her confidence from weeks ago had thinned into something brittle. I don't want this to be dramatic, she said. It won't be, I replied. That surprised her. She shifted in her chair. I never meant for things to get complicated, she began. It just sort of happened. I stayed quiet. She exhaled, rubbing her hands together. I didn't plan it. I swear. Still quiet. Her eyes finally met mine, searching for a reaction. When she didn't find one, she kept talking. It didn't mean anything. There it was. The first line, delivered quickly like ripping off a bandage. It was just attention, she continued. I felt invisible for a long time. I leaned back slightly, folding my arms, not to close myself off, but to stay still. I was lonely, she said next, voice softer now. You were always working, always tired, always somewhere else. She waited again. I gave her nothing. Her shoulders sagged, frustration creeping in. Say something. I looked at her calmly. I'm listening. She swallowed. It wasn't serious. It wasn't emotional. I didn't even know how far it was going to go. I almost smiled at that one. Almost. So you didn't know? I said, finally speaking, until you did. She flinched. That's not what I meant. I know, I replied. Keep going. She stared at me, unsettled by my tone. This wasn't the confrontation she'd rehearsed. There were no raised voices, no accusations she could deflect, just space, and truth filling it whether she liked it or not. It was only a few times, she said quietly. There it was, the admission slipping through the cracks. With your boss? I asked. She nodded. I let the silence stretch. Let it do what words couldn't. Her foot tapped nervously under the table. She reached for her mug, then didn't drink. I never wanted to hurt you, she added quickly. I just didn't feel chosen anymore. I studied her face, not with anger, with clarity. You didn't feel chosen, I said. So you chose someone else. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I was lonely, she repeated, like repetition could turn justification into truth. I leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table. Loneliness is a feeling, I said. Cheating is a decision. She shook her head. You make it sound so cold. No, I replied. I'm making it accurate. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something closer to panic. The realization that this conversation wasn't about salvaging anything, that I wasn't bargaining, that I wasn't pleading. I didn't think you'd react like this, she said. How did you expect me to react? I asked. She hesitated. Angry. Hurt. Something. I nodded. I just didn't bring it with me. That landed harder than shouting would have. She leaned back, crossing her arms again, trying to reclaim ground. You're acting like you're above this. I'm acting like I respect myself, I corrected. That's not fair, she snapped. You weren't perfect either. I never claimed to be, I said evenly. But I was loyal. She looked away. I worked, she continued, voice rising slightly. I contributed. I tried. You tried, I repeated, until trying required honesty. Her jaw tightened. You don't get to rewrite our marriage like this. I'm not rewriting it, I said. I'm reading it clearly. Another silence. Heavier now. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence she'd worn for weeks had finally slipped off. I didn't think you'd leave, she said quietly. I met her eyes. That's the part you keep missing. She frowned. What part? You thought loyalty meant permanence, I said. That no matter what you did, I'd stay. Her lips parted, but no words came. I stayed because I believed in us, I continued. I left because you stopped believing in me. She blinked rapidly, emotion finally breaking through. So that's it? You're just done? I stood slowly, chair scraping softly against the floor. No, I said. You were done first. I just accepted it. She stood too, desperate now. Please, we can fix this. It was a mistake. I looked at her for a long moment, really looked. At the woman who'd once waited up for me, who'd laughed at burnt toast and shared Sunday mornings, and at the woman who'd lied to my face and called it ambition. A mistake is spilling coffee, I said quietly. This was a choice. Her shoulders slumped. I hope it was worth it. I added, not cruelly, just honestly. She whispered my name. I turned toward the door, pausing once without looking back. This is the last thing I'll say. I said, you didn't lose me because I stopped loving you. You lost me because I learned to love myself more. This is where dignity replaces heartbreak. Chapter 10. Loyalty is a choice. The city had a rhythm all its own. New York moved fast, indifferent to the lives unfolding on its streets, and that was exactly what I needed. The clatter of subway cars, the buzz of yellow cabs, the blur of people who didn't notice or care about me. It was liberation, not from her specifically, but from the weight I had carried for months, trying to shape myself into someone who could fit the space she wanted me to occupy. I rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far enough from the chaos of Midtown, but close enough to the energy I craved. Boxes still leaned against the walls, half unpacked, but I didn't care. Each one represented choices I had made for me, not for anyone else. My mornings became my own again. I brewed coffee in a pot that no one else had touched, sat by the window with sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor, and let the city wake around me. Emails, calls, meetings, they came with opportunity, not obligation. No one expected me to explain why I couldn't be found. No one expected me to justify my presence. The first weekend I spent walking through Central Park, I felt the weight of her absence and the freedom of my presence at the same time. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. It was the first time in months I felt the quiet affirmation that I didn't need permission to exist fully without apology. I thought about the way she had panicked when I left. The calls, the messages, the frantic questions. She had assumed control was something she could take from me, but in reality, I had simply chosen not to give it to her anymore. Power is subtle, after all. Sometimes, it's the absence of reaction that leaves the deepest impression. I walked past a cafe and smelled roasted coffee, strong and sharp, and remembered mornings she had slept late, unaware, indifferent. I remembered the dinners where she glanced at her phone instead of my face. I remembered the lies she had dressed up as ambition. But I didn't feel bitterness. Not anymore. I met people here without expectation. Colleagues respected me not because of proximity, not because I waited for them, but because I delivered results and carried myself with a quiet authority. Confidence had returned, not cocky or defensive, but grounded. My life was mine, and it had space for generosity without sacrifice. One evening, as the city lights began to blink awake, I stood on my apartment balcony, watching the skyline, a glass of wine in hand. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Unknown number. I ignored it. Another buzz. I scrolled. It was a message from her. I don't know what happened. I messed up. I miss you. I read it, then deleted it without responding. The words had lost their gravity. I had already made the choice that mattered. She hadn't taken a man from me. She had merely revealed who she was. And I had moved on. I walked through the streets at night, boots clicking against wet pavement, the hum of the city around me. For the first time in a long time, the solitude was restorative, not lonely. I felt the strength of boundaries I had drawn, the comfort of knowing my own mind and heart were enough. I met with friends, dined alone, read in cafes. I was visible, but not for anyone else's approval. And the funny thing about loyalty? It's not performative. It's not about tests or ultimatums. It's about consistency, integrity, and choice. One afternoon, I found myself staring at the skyline from a high-rise meeting room. The city stretched endlessly, chaotic and unforgiving. And I realized something. Life is like this city, full of opportunities, risks, surprises. You can't control everything, but you can control who you are within it. I wasn't just surviving here. I was thriving. She had wanted me to respond to ultimatums, to bend to her will, to reassure endlessly. I had done that once. I had sacrificed ambition, dignity, and time for her comfort. But not now. Not anymore. I had learned that loyalty isn't something you test. It's something you live by or you walk away from. I thought back to the nights she had claimed she was lonely. How convenient that her loneliness coincided with my career ambitions, my late hours, my dedication. She had painted absence as failure on my part, ignoring her own choices. And in the reflection of the city lights, I realized I wasn't mourning what I lost. I was grateful for clarity. The apartment was quiet. My reflection in the window showed a man at ease. Hair a little longer, shoulders relaxed. Eyes that no longer carried the tension of a marriage fractured by secrecy and deflection. I poured another glass of wine and toasted silently to honesty, to boundaries, to self-respect. Weeks passed. Emails from New York's office became opportunities one seized eagerly. Colleagues started to call me by my first name with deference. I negotiated deals with confidence. I made decisions without second-guessing. Every day reinforced the choice I had made, the path I had chosen for myself. Her messages stopped eventually. The frantic texts, the apologies, the pleas, all dissolved into silence. And I didn't miss them. I realized then that her panic had been temporary, but my transformation wasn't. I had grown beyond waiting for someone to validate me, beyond waiting for someone to realize what they had taken for granted. I smiled at the thought. She hadn't lost a man, she had lost a standard of loyalty, of honesty, of respect that I had never compromised until she forced the lesson. And now, standing amid my own life rebuilt, I knew she would realize too late what she had let slip through her fingers. At night, when the city was quiet, I sometimes walked the streets alone, thinking of the past. Not with anger, not with regret, but with perspective. There's a certain power in leaving well, in keeping your dignity when others attempt to erode it. I paused at a street corner one evening, neon lights flickering, and felt the weight of what I had learned. Life isn't about retribution. It isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about knowing your worth, honoring it, and never settling for less than that. And in that quiet, almost imperceptible way, the truth settled around me. Loyalty is not a test to pass. It is not a prize to be awarded for persistence. It is a choice. And some choices are made by walking away. The city pulsed beneath me, indifferent, unstoppable, alive. And so was I, whole, free, unapologetically mine. She thought loyalty was something you test. I learned it's something you walk away for.